Viewgates, crazy German fans. Been a while since I posted a video. It's already the 1st of November. So I did want to put up a quick video and go over a couple of things. First is going to be kind of some tips from Crazy German here on getting started in the Flames of War. Things that I've learned over the last few years playing the game, mistakes I made when I first got into playing the matches, and in the models that I purchased that I shouldn't have purchased, especially if you're on a budget. I also wanted to give you a quick update on the two projects I was working on. The Skull Vein Manse, which is basically done. We'll show you out here in the workshop in a little bit. And my Panzer Grenadier diorama turned out great. I got it done. It's already on display in its display case, and we'll go out in the workshop and I'll show you that. But first things first, I got some of the Flames of War books here off to the side, and wanted to cover some of the basics for you guys that are just getting started in Flames of War. The first one, I would highly recommend picking up the Open Fire, which is their starter box. You can order it online. You can get it at your local hobby shop that carries Flames of War. Obviously, I think it's about $100. I personally don't own it, but if I were getting started into the game, that would be a good starting point. You get an small American force, and you'll also get a small German force. Obviously, I'm a big German forces fan, hence the Panzer leader hat that I have here. It's an exact replica of what a Panzer crew member would have worn, without obviously the Third Reich emblem on the front here. This snaps in the front and folds down and makes a cover for your ears, so it helps keep you warm. It's wool. It is a wool cap. It's very comfortable. I also have the desert version of this hat, which is the tan, obviously. I'll wear these sometimes when I'm playing the game to try to get me into the whole atmosphere of playing. But going back to the starter box, and me being a German fan, it does come with a small German force to get you started. Obviously, it's there to just get you through the basics. The nice thing, if you don't have someone, say a best friend or someone that you hang out with doesn't have any Flames of War forces, you could have 2 people play, or 3 or 4 people play, and they don't have to invest anything other than the showing up at your place and throwing down with the Americans and the Germans. It is all plastic. We'll go out in the workshop here in a little bit. I'll show you the forces that I have, and you look back on some of my older videos. I was fortunate enough to get in the game when they were still making the metals. Personally, I'm a metal guy because I like the weight of the pieces better. But those days are gone. That'll never come back. They've got to compete with companies like the Plastic Soldier Company, so they've had to go to the plastics. My only complaint is I haven't seen the pricing come down yet enough for the plastics, which would encourage more guys to get into the game. But all the tanks that you'll see out there that I have on the board I have set up out in the workshop, they all have the metal tracks, the resin bodies, all the troops are metal. I never had a problem with the detailing. Some guys say, oh, the detailing was terrible on the metal. Whatever, everyone has their opinion. Personally, I had no problem with it. It actually feels like something that's substantial, and it's worth, 5 tanks for $50. A nice heavy tank to me is worth $10. Don't sell me a cheap plastic tank that I have to spend time assembling. Right? I got to put the whole little tank together, and you're still charging me the $10. I mean, the older tanks, I could have those put together, primed in like 30 minutes. So anyway, I digress. But it's a good place to start. In the starter box, you'll get the small rule book like this. You can see these came out when they came out with the new rule books. the big book. They came out with these. They were handing these out literally for free if you went to your local hobby shop, and I picked up several copies of this. But in the starter box you get this, and what we do is you just go up to a local copy store, you know, Kinko's and any place like that, and what they did is they laminated the front and the back page, and then you have it spiral bound. I highly recommend doing this. It's like 10 or 15 bucks. Then you can fold the book open. You know, it's super convenient this way. It's really a lot better for when you're playing and referencing the rules as you get to know the rules. The big book is nice to purchase down the road if you're just getting started. Get the starter box. It comes with the rules, it comes with some dice, it comes with everything you need to get started. And then down the road, when you pick this up, it'll actually come with some starter army lists, which I'll show you here in just a second. The army lists are important as you build off of that starter set. I highly recommend that you study the stats to the models and buy models, that you're interested in, like the Tiger tank. That's great if you're playing early to mid-war lists, but honestly the Tiger tank really doesn't do well in late war lists unless you're going up against American forces with Shermans. I found out really quickly playing my son who plays Russians that the Tiger does not stand up to the IS-2 whatsoever. And some of the KVs, I mean KV-1, KV-2, they've got the SU-122, 150s, 152. They'll take Tiger out like that. So you really learn quickly if you're going to play late war against the Soviets, you're really going to need to look at the Panther tank. And you tell that by picking up, this is the big book for the Germans, it's the Grey Wolf, and it obviously will have the lists that you'll come to find in all the books that are very standard throughout all their army, what we call army books. They'll be for various campaigns. This one is Axis forces on the Eastern Front, January 44 through February 45. So they'll cover all the, not all, but the bulk of the armies that the Germans were fielding during that period. The common equipment that the unit would have, since this is based on the company level, and then down to the platoon level, it'll help guide you. But what you need to do is, if you get down towards the back, which will give you some painting guidelines, what colors to buy, and I highly recommend those of you guys maybe familiar with Games Workshop paints. I've been phasing all my Games Workshop paints out to Vallejo, the Vallejo range. So we'll show you that out here in the shop. But you'll see where in the back, now this is the finished arsenal, but it'll show you a list of the arsenal. And then you quickly look over to what the rate of fire is, the firepower, the armament of the tank. And you really need to start looking at those before you purchase models, and make sure you're not buying models that are just going to get blown off the board, have no chance. Really study the artillery. I do use artillery a lot. You use artillery to lay down smoke bombardments. A lot of the artillery pieces, and this is what you got to look at, a lot of the artillery pieces you can use as dual usage. You can use them for artillery bombardments, and you can use them as an anti-tank role. As your unit's getting rushed, they can actually lower their guns down and just pick tanks off that are coming at them, or enemy units obviously. And some of the artillery does not work at a dual use capacity, so some just fire bombardments, some can be, then you'll see it'll have on there, it'll have the anti-tank rating of the artillery unit listed. If it's got an anti-tank rating, it can shoot at tanks. And a lot of them do. I'm not saying that, most of them can fire at tanks, but some of them don't. But just don't go rushing out and just buying models willy-nilly is basically my tip to you. Really spend a little time with the big book, with its army list that it comes with. It'll come with, it's a separate little booklet. I have it out in the shop, I just didn't grab it. It's a separate little booklet. It's a great idea that they did that, because it gives you some new some starter lists to work with and to study, and then they also give you a hobby guide which will show you painting techniques, how to build a board, the basics of building a board. You can look at on my older videos that are pretty crummy, by the way, but they still show you some of the basics to getting at the board that I'll show you here in a little bit, how I built that. And it wasn't that hard, honestly. It was actually kind of fun to do it. So I play on a 6x6 board because it's perfectly square, so there's no short side. You keep it that way so it's easy to reach to the middle of the board, so everyone can easily reach to the middle of the board to make moves. It's the perfect size board. I love it. I play Warhammer Fantasy. I got a Crusade game that we play. And it works perfectly for other games. So the other book, my son's book, Red Bear, this is the lists of the Soviets. And so these really do complement each other. Grey Wolf and Red Bear. But again, my biggest tip is, do your homework. Don't just do what I did. Basically what I ended up doing was some guy at the local hobby shop was selling his German army. He had it in a display case with this for sale sign on it. We're talking, it had a couple Stugs, it had a lot of Panzer IVs, which are great for early mid-war. If you're playing desert, a lot of the lists they'll only have Panzer IVs, Panzer IIIs, the earlier German tanks. But again, those will end up being early to mid-war lists. I personally like to play late war, which is all the big toys, the King Tigers, the Panther tanks, the Jagdpanther, all the cool toys that the Germans had, the larger artillery pieces and things like that. But I'll show you here. I've got two armies. I got an American army up against a German army. They're both pretty good size. I think they're 3,000 points each. And it's kind of balanced. They're nice and balanced. I've kind of been toying with it. I've got some Panzer Grenadier units. I've got my artillery in the back. I've got my strategic tanks, like the Stugs, that I'll keep kind of in the corners a lot of times and just try to pick things off. It's kind of a defensive front. And then there's little tactics like that you'll learn. But again, do your homework. I bought a used army off the shelf. I get home, I start playing against my son's Soviets, which we purchased, built, painted, and then I started fighting them, and I realized every time I got beat because when you got down to it, even with the T-34s, the T-34s were just raping these Panzer IVs. It was just not even funny. I said, oh, I got to run him out to the store, and I bought some Tigers. Well, he ran to the store and bought some, we wouldn't get to the store, we bought him some IS-2s. And any of you guys that are history buffs know that IS-2 will take a Tiger out like it's nothing. Then it became an arms race, okay, in our house. He would get something bigger, I'd run out and get something bigger, and then finally it kind of matched. The biggest problem with this fighting Soviets as a German player is the numbers. You're always outnumbered, mostly 2 to 1, sometimes 3 to 1. You're typically fighting in a defensive posture. We'd set up bridge heads with a river, which is what we have on the table right now. And that can kind of get kind of boring. So then we started going with non-lists, and I invite you guys to do that as you mature as players. And even in any game, maybe just go with points. A lot of times in the Flames of War lists, they'll say you can only have 2 platoons of X tank. The Soviets get 4 platoons of X tank. And we'd say, oh, they're equal in points. And instead of me always being in a defensive posture and we could really go at it head to head, we'd say it's 3,000 points. You can bring whatever you want for 3,000 points worth, as an example, or 2,500 points, whatever you decide that point value to be. That way, I felt that it was, because a lot of times these lists are obviously historically accurate to a certain degree, and then historically accurately, the Germans were typically on the defensive that time of the war. You can pick lists out that were Operation Barbarossa, where you can have a little bit more even keel, which at that point the Soviets were weaker. I like to fight the games that are evenly matched, so it comes down to the tactics and obviously the roll of the dice to determine the game instead of it. You know, I hated always playing defense, hiding behind the bridgeheads and hiding on the hills and that kind of thing, which, it has its place, and we've had some fun playing battles like that. Yeah, do your homework. Some things that I've learned as a player is maybe not necessarily bending the rules, but making it so I guess your idea at any game, even Warhammer, is you want to make sure the forces are evenly matched. There's no cheese involved. Okay, try to squeeze the cheese out of the match, and make it about the strategy, the dice rolls, and to keep it fun that way, and that one player doesn't feel like, oh, I've been taken advantage of. Some other thoughts. Definitely take time as you get your miniatures and you build them in your starter set, or as you buy the blister packs or the boxes of tanks. Take your time, clean them up properly when you assemble the new tank kits. Spend the time doing it right. Learn about tanks are easy. I typically started with a base coat of black to get the recesses of the wheels with black. And then basically I would brush on, and I like to use the oil-based paints for my tanks because they're going to handle it a lot, and oil-based paints tend to hold up. It's a tougher paint. But take your time to do it right with the dry brushing and with using washes to really get a good effect, to make the tank look cool, and make sure the decals are on there nice. And take your time, don't be in a rush, because you'll be happy down the road, because these things are worth money. Once you build your tanks and put the care into painting them right, and get yourself a battle foam bag to keep your hard-earned treasures in, instead of just throwing them in a box, because these things will appreciate with value. They're going to hold their value and go up in value if you've painted them right. Someday you want to get out of this game, you could sell them to someone and get at least all your money that you've got in them out of them again. But if they're not painted right and you just threw them together and just really didn't take much time, no one's going to buy them. So, plus it's the personal satisfaction as far as I'm concerned. I've got 6 battle foam bags full of Flames of War stuff out there. So I haven't built a British army. It's the only army I have not built. I've got some Hurricanes out here, which are an airplane that the British used, just as like the start, because I wanted to grab, because now they only make 1 plane. You get 1 plane, and used to get 3. So I grabbed those while they were still out on the shelf. When I start to build my British army, I will be hunting down metal. Any metal I can grab, metal and resin tanks, metal troops. I think those are pretty still heavily out there for British. So I should probably get off my butt this winter and maybe build a British force, get me another bag for my British army, and then I'll have all of them covered. Because I wanted to do half the bag in desert British, early war desert, so I could do some battling. I've got some German stuff that's painted up in desert, so I can do some desert battles. And then the other half of the bag will be late war British, so I can do some D-Day stuff, that kind of thing. Italian campaign, late war stuff would be kind of interesting to do. I have some Italian villas and things out there that I can use for the thing. I also was going to do my board that you'll see here in a little bit. One side is done in green earth tones, and I'm going to flip it over eventually, and I'm going to do the other side in a desert scheme, which I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But let's see, anything else I can think of for tips for new players, other than studying the lists, make sure you're picking out good units, effective units, making sure it's balanced. Another tip that runs through my mind is you really don't, at least I don't, You do use infantry sometimes to take objectives if you're doing objective-based games, which are also fun, by the way. That's what we have set up out here. It's a 3-point objective game. Not use a lot of infantry. Their infantry are a lot tougher to paint, obviously. We're talking 15 millimeters, so they're a lot smaller, and to get the detailing and using a lot of washing techniques is what I used to do. I would, let's say for instance, I was building Germans, and I was making Panzer Grenadiers. I would base coat them in tan. Okay, so that automatically covers, you know, their tunics. Then you can go back and just paint the pants gray. So it kind of helps cut down on some of the painting if you start with a base coat on your troops that are, it may be taking care of 2 of the colors you're going to be using on the troops. And that'll cut down on your time to paint. You know, you can just buy a small can of Model Master spray paint in the color that you're gonna. If you're Americans, you obviously use something like maybe an olive drab base coat. That, I mean, then you got to just pick out your faces, your hands with flesh. Do the guns in dark brown. Do a gunmetal gray for their barrels or whatever you want to do. Their belt buckles and things that you want to pick out. Do a wash, a nice light brown wash. Let them dry. They're ready to base. You know, so you're only dealing with maybe 4 colors, right? And then wash them, and they'll look really good. And I'll show you that I use that technique on a lot of my stuff to make them look. They still look really good, and yet aren't taking you hours and hours and hours. But my point initially was, don't go crazy buying huge amounts of infantry. Unless you're using like an airborne unit or something, there's going to be a lot of infantry. And there's time and place for those. They're going to be hard pressed against some of the German units and things in terms of winning. So, but search the internet. There's all kinds of stuff on there. Give you tips if you're interested in airborne. You know, it'll really show you. A lot of the guys out there have videos on how to build a good airborne list. Being a German player, I'm mostly focused on German stuff, and I do have an American army, and I do have some airborne on that, and I've got them on the table out there. We'll show you. I've got all the different kinds of Shermans. I got the Jumbo, the Fury, you know, the Easy 8, basically. Yeah, their tanks are, you know, very tough to use against the Germans. They have to use a lot of tactics, good tactics, to get on the sides of the Germans and flanking maneuvers, using a lot of smoke, things like that. So yeah. Don't go crazy. I bought a box of Fallschirmjägers. I just finished, if you see my videos. It just took me forever because I just got bogged down because there's just so, you see all these stands of infantry. You just got to go and pick all the details. And of course, being Fallschirmjägers, I had to camo the tunics with 3 or 4 different colors with, you know, the ammo pattern, and it was, you know, it just seemed like it took forever to finish those because it was this big box. That's all it was. It's just mass infantry. I have them. I honestly haven't played a game with them yet. I just had to have them as something to collect. But if you're getting into the game and you're looking to watch your money, you just have to be choosy on what you're building and the army lists that you're creating. And build that list, play it, and you say, you know what? I really could use a couple more of this, or I could really use a couple more of that, or you know what? I really don't want to play this list anymore. I kind of want to go and play more Late Horde blah 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 list. Maybe a friend will take those off your hand and buy them, or just mothball them and say, hey, I've got those that are part of my collection, and I'll go and build this list over here. Don't do what I did. I just bought a bunch of stuff blindly. I hadn't even read through the rule book yet, and I regretted it. I got units sitting in my bag I have never used. They just sit. And it's a shame, but again, you know, I'm also a collector. That's kind of how I justified it. I say, hey, I've got this as part of my collection. I never use it because it's weak and it always gets beat down. You know, the rockets, the German rocket units. I mean, they'll only take out other infantry, right? They're useless against tanks. They're useless against armored vehicles. So they're so limiting. I hardly ever use them, but I've got them. I got a whole platoon of. I forget the name of what they called their rocket launchers, but I got this unit of rocket launchers that sits in the bag. Okay. That's about all I can think of. A shout out to all my heroes out there, which would be Beasts of War. Love you guys. I love your videos. I'm also a premium member, as it were. Blue Table Painting, Sean Gately, and all you guys. You know, always fun watching your videos and the shenanigans and things that are on their videos. That's about it. I do subscribe to several of the model painting channels out there, Scale War Miniatures. Since I've kind of reached a point where I've got a lot of armies built and I'm just playing and having fun with the armies I have, so I kind of got more into doing the models and the dioramas so I can still keep my modeling skills going forward. I'm still not there yet. I'm not golden brush standards. I do my best with what I've got, the skills that I have, which you'll see here in a minute. I think it's still pretty decent. Although I find every kit that I build, every box of miniatures I paint, I get better and better and better and better. Learning different techniques and how to highlight things and things, picking the details out and stuff gets better and better. So that's basically it. Please post any comments down below if you're a new player, if something I haven't touched on, you'd like me to, a question you'd have to answer. At one of my videos, I don't know if the guy was serious or not, he was talking about the you know, the cost and blah blah blah, and I'm like, you know, it's called a budget. You have to sit down and figure out how much you make, and when all your bills are paid, if you have a little bit left over, you can spend a little bit of that. It's like, come on. I don't know if he was serious, but please, no stupid comments, no, because I'll just delete it and block you. So let's have some constructive comments here. If you're a new player, think about your question before you ask. Ask yourself, can I answer this question myself before I waste this person's time? Not that I don't want questions. I'm saying I want questions. I just want good questions. Thought out questions that are not you know, just yanking my chain, so to speak. I'll answer them the best way I can. Another great place for you guys to go is the forum. You know, on the Flames of War website, they do have a forum. It's great. I will warn you in advance, there are some real smart asses on there. You know, they think they're highly intellectual, and they're much smarter than you, of course, and they're going to school you on all the nuances of the game. Just ignore those people. You're going to get those on any forum you go to. I don't care what the topic is. Warhammer, there's the guys out there, you know, they're God's gift to the game, and you're stupid, and you know the type of people I'm talking about. But there are a lot of cool guys on there that will give you some great tips. Will help you point out some of the things on the lists. Like I said, I'm more versed in the German lists and some of the American stuff. I know a little bit about the Russians, helping my son build his armies over the last few years, but yeah, Russian's a great list to go for, guys. It's if you look at the tournaments, they're really they've got a lot of great stuff. They kind of reined them back a little bit with this new edition of the rules, because they were kind of running away with some of the tournaments. There was a lot of cheese in there, so they did kind of rein the Russians back. The big thing with the Russians is the artillery bombardments are devastating. And I highly recommend you make sure you're getting artillery in on your list, because they're very useful. Strategic use of infantry. The Soviets use trucks, and that's easy. You're going to take a truck out like that as opposed to an armored personnel carrier like the Germans have. But that's effective to move the troops around really quickly in a motorized vehicle. They're good for coming in, taking objectives, holding them. That's the Struckelvoy, I think it's called, which is just mass infantry. If you're interested in painting lots of infantry, that will be your opportunity to do so. I mean, they just overwhelm you with just massive infantry that just rushes you, which is a tactic, you know, that can work. So I'm going to stop rambling on here. Just want to encourage you guys. It's a great hobby. Don't be intimidated by the costs. Just buy things little by little. You don't have to build your army today, all of it at once. You know, buy something, build it, paint it, put it aside. Think about what else you want, buy it, paint it, put it aside. Before you know it, 2, 3, 4 months goes by, you've got a great little army you've built up, and you can do it. You know, cost efficiently. Plastic Soldier Company, that's the big competitor with the Flames of War and Battlefront stuff. It's a lot cheaper. I don't think the details is nice. I personally prefer the Battlefront stuff, but you can still get the same effect buying their stuff. And that's cheaper. But anyway, let's go out here in the shop. I'll show you some of the stuff I've been working on. Okay, back out in the shop. This is my Panzer Grenadier diorama. I got the plastic display case from Hobby Lobby. I think it was like 20 bucks. And you can see you can use it, they sell it as for putting, you can put a football in there, an autographed football. You can use it for sports memorabilia, or you can use it like this. Turned out pretty good. This is a late war Panzer Grenadier unit on the Eastern Front. I've really focused on making sure the diorama kind of told a story. But there's your classic Panzer Grenadier unit, my favorite unit of World War II. You got the armored half-track, the Henelmag 251, and Panzer Grenadiers. I got the camoed top with the gray pant bottoms, kind of the classic SS unit, which is really what this would have been, an SS unit. You got the tank commander. Looks like they're paused, getting ready to plan an attack. He's talking to the SS commander there, who's going to give his instructions to his troops on how to go about carrying out this attack. Got some other elements around the side here. You got the guy, I modeled it so that the rear hatch for the half track was open, and we got a guy jumping out the back. We got a MG42 guy here with his ammo. He's moving to position. I'll spin it around here. I'll also show you the mix that I use for the thing. I mixed together some stuff, sand and some flat flocking and some things to get this effect. Trees, just store-bought trees. They're not handmade. I'll show you some other elements here in the model. So here's the other side. I got this guy here. He's kind of waiting for orders. The guy coming out the back again. Got a Panzer Grenadier jumping off the top. Again, those two different kits there. One was the Dragon model kit, because some of these figs came from Dragon. I think the two commanders and this guy here and a couple other guys were Dragon. And then the other kit was, I don't have it sitting over here. Here's the Dragon kit still sitting over here. There's your two commanders, a couple of Panzer Grenadiers. Oh, Tamiya. The guy jumping out of the top here, and the half-tracker Tamiya. The tank is Dragon. So you can see the Tamiya and the Dragon go well together. Those are actually two very good kits. Be quite honest with you, honestly, I thought I'd prefer the Tamiya, because it's got such a reputation. But I honestly thought the Dragon kit was better. I thought the Dragon kit, the directions kind of sucked, but the overall kit I thought was better. Better detail. The figs from the Dragon were, I thought, better detailed. So there's my 2 cents on that. I would stick with Dragon. I was really impressed with the kit. Coming from China, I was like, oh yeah, it's probably worse because the Tamiya is Japanese. But anyways, that's my 2 cents. The nice thing about these, this display case, is it lifts up, and you can see that it's a separate base. And that bottom that you see there, it has a little lip. And I never, obviously don't glue it, it just sticks in there. So I can still open this up at a future date if there's something I see that I really want to touch up, or something else I want to add. So you're not stuck, but it still protects the model from the dust. It makes it a great display thing, and it's cheap. I mean, you can get these for like 20 bucks. Come over here and I'll show you where we're at on the basically the finished result of the skull vein Manse. There's still some more fine detailing I'm going to be doing, a little bit more dry brushing. What I do with models a lot of times is I'll set them aside and I'll look at them for a few days and I'll say, oh, you know what, I think this could be touched up, or this could look better, and so I won't declare it's completed yet until I'm done. You'll notice the eyes have that glowy effect. I got it in these two. It's funny because this has just been Halloween, so this was actually the perfect model to be finishing for Halloween. I picked this up a week or 2 ago. It's the Vallejo. They make a red and an orange. I thought I'd try out the yellow first. It's basically almost like a fluorescent paint. Highly reflective, and that's what I used for the eyes to get that effect. I did like a purple background on that door, and then I did like a salmon color because I was trying to keep it kind of whimsical, as it is a sorcerer's place. This one I did almost like a blue, a light blue. I try to keep it a little whimsical. That's why I did the blue slate roof. I kept this. This was just a straight gray I did on the door, and then I just applied a wash, a brown wash, to make it look grungy. I still haven't highlighted the little bottle. I'll just go with some different tones of green on that to give it like the green wine bottle look. So that still needs to be picked out. I still want to do a little dry brushing on the rocks. I think the rocks can have a little lighter color on the tops for the contrast. Skulls I did white. I don't know if I'm going to go in with like a bone white to darken them just a little bit more. They might be a little too bright. That's just a dry brush with a white, with a lot of wash that I use first. So I've used some washes. I'm starting to learn to use the washes more sparingly and not going crazy. I think I want to do some more dry brushing on the windows to highlight the windows, but you can see with the little light wash that I did, and I've already done 2 colors to give it some contrast and color variation. But I think it will all turn out great. I can't stress enough how much I love painting Games Workshop models, even their figs. I'll turn around here so you can see the other side of it. I did the glowy eyes, and they've got a guy carved here. I might go back in with some black and just do the edges. I might have gone a little crazy with that a little bit, but I haven't decided yet. Let's see, I think this door was the salmon color with a wash. Did like a light brown wash. I did that kind of like a pale sand color on the sides to kind of give it almost that yellowish, like I said, that kind of a whimsical look. The metal panels here on the support structure for the tower. Something that still isn't totally complete. I still have some more work to do. I got to finish the lens. I did a couple base coats of the lens to get it started. I'm going to do some different colors, but I did bronze, and then I touched up some with gold and then darkened it a little bit with another dry brush to try to make it look like it's kind of like a bronzy kind of effect. This obviously can go on the top here. It makes it look freaking amazing. I absolutely love this model. Or, I showed another video, we got this structure that can come to the top, and you can, that's got a couple more colors that I've got to add to it, but you can see that it'll look more like a castle feature that way. If you want to treat it as like a stronghold, you could say there's a captured character up here that you have to rescue. It could be one of your missions, or you can just keep it flat like this. So you got some options with this. I haven't completely finished the top of that. It's got some nice detailing on it. I'm still picking some things out. I still have to do the door and some browns and pick out some of the details, but it turned out pretty well. Really happy with it. It's going to be a great addition to the board. It really adds a lot of flavor, you know, a lot of narrative to the battle. So let's get over here to the workshop. This is my current battle for fantasy. It's kind of centered around ruins of an old cathedral. Just the pieces of it remain. And we got the Beastmen with the Cygor throwing his big rock, and we got the Dark Elves with the, well, she's a dark, evil sorceress, and she's riding this dragon here. It's supposed to be a black dragon, but I painted it green because I just thought it would look better. You see she's pretty smoking. She's on there. We got our spearmen, our sword guys. I got a whole brigade of these dudes with the crossbows. I've showed these in another video, but to show you how they're laid out here on the battlefield. And the Cold One Knights. Now this is from the old Dark Elves book. I do not have the new Dark Elves book, so this is a list from the old book, and then the current Beastmen list. You see those guys? Those are your Minotaurs, and they freaking turned out great, I must admit. So fun game. But here's the Flames table. This is the 6x6 table, and here's my Thunderbolts. The Americans, back when they were selling them in back packages of 3. But again, here's your artillery, and also double as anti-tank to defend the headquarters. There's your headquarters. They sell that in a separate kit. I highly recommend it. It's a great little kit. The kit comes off, and you actually see, you know, General Patton and his dudes in there. They're planning their attack. So it turned out pretty good. Here's your tanks, but you can see it's kind of pretty well balanced. I got some infantry units over here, and you notice I started color coding my stuff. You know, red is for, that's a bazooka team. Blue is for the standard infantry. There's a tank platoon. You'll find that they have mixed tanks platoon, so you have regular Shermans mixed with an Easy 8 mixed with a jumbo. Let's see, that's the jumbo. Now that's an Easy 8. There's your Fury tank right there. And your jumbo is right here. There's your jumbo. Another tank platoon. Actually, it's not a tank platoon, it's a tank destroyer platoon. You can see there's scout there, scout vehicle. There's your M18 tank destroyers, which are the open hull, open turret. There's my paratroopers. I painted those tan on the rim to let everyone know that that's a paratrooper. You can tell by their uniforms, you can tell how they're painted. But I'll show you how I did these guys. Let's get the zoom to work right so you guys can see the detailing properly. We're talking just a few colors here, guys. I did a base coat in the basically like an olive drab. I did their boots in a lighter tan, almost like a leather. Then I just had to go out and pick out their faces, their hands, a few other little details, pick out some of their packs. But you can see the detail in that pack. That's all been accomplished by using a wash, a brown wash. Alright, to get all those details to come out. And I flocked them. And of course you cannot forget to overcoat them with a good lacquer, a flat lacquer, to protect the models. All my tanks have been done in a Model Master oil-based paint, because they get handled a lot. So I put some on there that could really protect the paint and keep the paint colors on. And then I also put on a protective flat lacquer finish. You could use Dull Coat. Model Master makes a couple different Dull Coats. Here's your German units. Here's the rockets that I said I never used, but I was going to try using them just for the fun of it. So I lied earlier. They are actually getting used. There's my Stugs, which is this is a Panzer Grenadier list that I have here. We've got this list. You had to play Panzer IVs. So there's my Panzer IVs, but then there are my Tigers. I brought some Tigers, right? And I brought some Panthers. This is a pretty formidable force. There's my Panzer Grenadiers and half-tracks. More Panzer Grenadiers and half-tracks. Another artillery unit. And I'll show you what I do on the bottoms here. I put on there what it is, the date that I painted it. Put a 10.5 just so I can remind myself to look on the list in case I forget. Always, if you're playing Americans or Soviets late war, you want to bring these. I've got 3 of them on the board. They are anti-aircraft. And you're going to need those because the Germans really didn't have a lot of air support late in the war. I got an ME-262 hanging around here somewhere, but it's usually very sporadic. They don't come into the game all the time, but you can see, like, this is your battle foam. Here's my list that I drew up. So I make up my list of the models. I've got so many models. You can see over there the piles of bags over there. I can pretty much make up any list that I want, and then I just go and, like, I'm picking an order, and I just go and I just pick what I need. But this is how I store them. This is from the Battle Foam company. You can see how well everything fits. It's purposely built just for Flames of War. Keep your little goodies protected. So I got lots of backup if I need to call in backup. I'm just kidding. You can only play with what I've got here. Now, the German list honestly is a little bit beefed up this game because we found that playing the traditional list was not taking these objectives. There's one objective, there's another one, and that's basically what the Germans are doing here. They've got to come across the river and take these 2 of these 3 objectives to win the game. So what I did was we put in, like I said, sometimes you can't go by the letter of the law. In this scenario, the Germans needed to be a little bit more powerful because the Americans have such a great defensive position. And then the Americans also will get use of the defensive fortifications, sandbags up through the river, and that helps them fortify. And they're at a kind of at an advantage. So the Germans have to use. We threw in the 4 Tigers, and I threw in off the list 2 extra. You got your first in command and your second in command, and I threw in 2 more 4s. Is really all that the Germans have extra on the list, just to try to give them just a little bit more of a punch to have a better chance, because we've played a few games with the standard list and the Germans just couldn't even get across the river, and they were just getting annihilated. So this might make it more even and make the battle seem more fair. So that's kind of it, guys. That's how I do mine. I bought the little dice kits. They're great. The buildings I've bought over the years at various trade shows, conventions. There's your Italian buildings. And all this other stuff's available from Battle Foam. Tree stands I've made myself. Store-bought trees, and then you just buy a sheet Luan, cut it out, and flock it. I've got that all covered in another video. So you'll have to go back and look at that. But the tree stands are nice because I've put enough space between the trees. So this counts as a grove of trees, and you can still put models easily in the trees. If one of the trees breaks, all it takes is a little Elmer's glue and you're back in business. But they turned out great. We did a little hedgerows with Luan, and then just some out of the bag material that you can just glue down and make it look just like a perfect hedgerow. There's some there with rocks. Got some there I put a little tree on. So you're going to have your hedgerows. So there you go. Alright guys, that pretty much concludes it. I just want to do a quick video, a few extra tips. Hope that helps anybody out there who's getting into the game and getting into modeling in general. Alright, have a great week, and ciao.